Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome back to Tiny Glade, the final part of this Mage City build. There was a couple of good suggestions. I think Arcania was quite a nice one, but nothing that really particularly stuck out. It's just going to be the Mage City build that we did in Tiny Glade, and that's how we're going to remember it. This is the final part of the build and probably the final Tiny Glade video for at least a little bit on the channel. I've had a real blast building in this game, but I do think I feel like I've seen a lot of what can be done with it. I do have ideas for some of the builds, but you know, with Planet Coaster 2 just around the corner and us covering a few Next Fest things this week, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to find my time in the game coming up, and like I say, also I feel like I've done a good build with it here, and we've really sort of made use of the pieces and what the game is capable of doing, and I think that's a great way to step away from it for now, and 100% come back if we see some additions. Talking of which, the developers are currently on a very well-earned break. There's been a couple of little updates, mostly sort of bug fixes and things like that. There's been an issue with some graphics cards, apparently. Luckily, it's not been a problem for me. As you can imagine, you know, you've seen videos. But there's been some issues there, and they feel like they've got a handle on that now, and they are taking a well-earned break. Having, you know, it must be almost bittersweet, really, when you release a game like this. You worked on something for years, you know, in the sort of confines of your own space, in your own head, and then it gets out into the world and does incredibly well. You know, over 500,000 copies, I think I read, that are sold of this game, which is, you know, astronomical for an indie developer, for a small indie developer like this. And I think it's testament to just how beautiful the game is, how fun it is, how accessible it is. And everything. I think altogether they've just created an incredible product, but I do think that before, you know, yes, some bug fixes have happened or what have you, but before the next thing happens, you know, the add-ons, the new content, I think this is a great time for them to say, here's the game as we intended at launch, have fun with it, we'll be back in a couple of months. And I think that is an incredible call, especially for a small team. You know, it's literally a two-person team for the most part. I think some people have done music and stuff, but for the most part, the actual game development is a two-person team, and I think they have very much earned a break. And you know, I don't know how quick Steam money comes in, but you know, go and spend some of that money, man. You've earned it. Like have fun. We'll be here having fun with this game, and like I say, definitely sort of looking forward to new content, but certainly not rushing it in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to finish off this build, and then if we do see sort of additions to the game later on that warrant us sort of coming back to it, that's 100% something we're going to be doing. Even in this build, we're using some of the new additions. One of the best things they've added is the game sort of remembers the last color palette you used, which is fantastic. Would have been very useful before, but very happy that that's in the game. You are now able to turn off the crenellations, so be that either the wooden fences or the stone crenellations. That's actually an option now for you to turn that off, which is also really great, especially on wall pieces. And it means we can do something that would have been very difficult to do before, which is a staircase on this building that we're building today. Still takes a little while to do, but the fact that we can force it to have flat tops to the walls mean you know, just make it very, very viable. Makes it really great. Here then, we are building an observatory, excuse me. Again, in the last episode, I was looking for suggestions as what the final sort of build here, what the sort of main sort of build area is going to look like here, and because originally I had the idea of a church or you know, some sort of cathedral or temple, didn't really go with the sort of magey vibe that we ended up going for, and a few people suggested an observatory, and I think that's an absolutely great idea. I do feel like I'm a little limited in the piece use here. I couldn't really get something that looked like the large telescopes poking out of the observatory build, but luckily you can do this real nice sort of round bulbous roof, which I think has got a very observatory vibe, and then we do have a small little window at the top that you can just step out of, and it definitely sort of gives the idea of an observatory, and I think works quite well as just a single large build in the sort of center point of this higgledy-piggledy village with lots of different little bits and bobs all over the city. Here, instead of all of those nooks and crannies, it opens out into this relatively grandiose singular building, and I think it actually works quite well. And again, we're getting to play with a couple of pieces we haven't really been able to do much with, the main one being these beautiful banners. I kept the blue colour, I think it looks quite nice. I didn't have to sit and set them all to the moon. I felt like the moon was a good symbol for both the city in general and also an observatory kind of looking place. I did put a row of windows there, and then here you'll see I actually went around and just kind of tried to fill the roof with windows, and I've left this in even though it doesn't stay, because I really want to sort of show that, you know, all of this isn't perfect. It doesn't happen all by magic. Sometimes you can do something and it doesn't really quite work out, and that's what happened here. I liked the idea of it. I finished it. I zoomed out a little bit. I didn't remember even doing this, but I even did one more. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, no. And got rid of them all apart from that single row. So the idea was to try and make it, you know, the glass on the observatory roof so you could look up at the stars and what have you. But it just didn't quite work out with the things we were able to. Who knows? Perhaps conservatories is on the roadmap at some point. We could see a glass build or a glass roof or something like that. That would be really neat. But as it stands, I think we've just quite this quite nice little sort of grandiose building on the edge of the map there. Here, I wanted to keep the spaces either side of this building relatively open, just to kind of really draw the eye up to it. But this space here was a little too large on its own, so we just end up with a single mage tower. The idea here is trying to tie in the blue and white vibe of the mage quarter and this newer build, so sort of trying to tie those together and have the flow work a little bit better through the city in this open area. And also, it's just really fun to place down all these little witchy looking pillars and pointy roofs. It's really great fun. Okay, here we go then. This some of this was built before the update, some of it was afterwards, and here with the update they did make it so that, as you can see there, roof pieces can be flat and straight and not have either stairs or crenellations on them, and that also applies to singular wall pieces, which means, now this was possible before. I had seen people do this kind of stuff, but it was a little tricky to do with the way that the walls work naturally. They're more of like a ruined wall originally, and it meant that you often sort of got variations in the height here, and you had to sit and break the walls into lots of pieces to work them, and it was just a little bit too much work. But now with this update you can do flat topped walls, which means we can do one of these awesome death trap of a staircase up the side of the buildings, and I think it just looks great. It breaks up the large stone tower there. It's just something we haven't done anywhere else in the building, but I still think it works really quite well. And yeah, it was quite fun. Interestingly, I often find, I play a lot of these sort of simulation creative games, and I often find that when you get into a menial task like this, you kind of get into a vibe with it, and you just sort of, you know, you got a podcast on or a YouTube video or something on your other monitor, and you just kind of get in the vibe. And I didn't with this. Like, every single piece I had to pay attention to, mostly because there's no way to sort of snap them there, and you have to make sure everyone is good. Occasionally you'll see me go back and readjust them. So yeah, it was not a sort of brain dead task, this one. Every single piece had to be thought about, and eventually we get to the bottom and I was like, I don't really know what to do here at the bottom, and I realized that the water was fairly close to the other side there, so instead we just made a simple little sort of step up to the building there, just to kind of cap that off. And then the last few bits here are just kind of filling out these. Again, all of these could have buildings, but I actually quite like just a little bit of nature creeping up in certain parts, just to give the texture of the whole build just a little bit of variation. So here on the evil magey side, we're using some of the broken trees, the dead trees. And then the other side, we do some more traditional ones. And then here, this building just needed a little something, just a very big open space. So we placed down just a very simple little pagoda to cap off the space. a few lamps around the place to get some nice nighttime shots. We've mostly been showing off the shots of this place at night. Oh yeah, a few chimneys as well. Just the smoke of the chimneys, the lamps that just give a little bit of movement to the place, a little bit of texture, and they really sort of cap off the build. So we finish off with those. And here's a couple of pretty little shots of what it looks like at the end. I've adored my time in Tiny Glade. I've had an absolute blast in here, and I do very much look forward to being able to come back and show you more from it. But until then, we'll be cracking on with some Planet Coaster 2, lots of other stuff on the channel as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. Until the next one, be good.